Mysterious historical objects found in Egypt. Is skepticism around AI finally beginning? The Cambridge plagiarism professor, we'll unpack that. And are fat jabs finally going to get what they deserve? That plus more in today's Trending.
100 years ago, Nikola Tesla discovered a healing technology that threatened the entire pharmaceutical industry. The day he died, the government seized everything. For 100 years, this technology was hidden. Until now, plasma is back. Tesla Club, tzla.club.
Well, good morning, everybody. I hope you're well. Friday morning, the end of the week. We're going to do something a little bit different this morning because there's so many stories this week around artificial intelligence. So many. Now, we've covered this extensively. We can't keep saying the same thing. I think anybody that watches this show is under no uncertain terms what the opinion is on AI in terms of the dangers of it, where it's coming from, the end goals with it, and so on. There's no disillusion about that. However, what I'm noticing is that people seem to be finally starting to look at this with a degree of skepticism. So that's fantastic, because when you're skeptical of something, you're much more likely to resist it because you know something doesn't feel right about it. Something doesn't feel easy about it. It feels very much like, this I don't like the direction we're going here. Therefore, I'm going to approach it with a degree of skepticism, which is a good thing. When you blindly believe something without any questioning, you're more likely to be hoodwinked into something that is less than helpful to you and humanity. So that's a positive thing, and we'll come to that shortly. But to start with, I want to talk about this subject. This is a story from the Daily Mail. Mysterious discovery near Egyptian pyramids reveals how ancient structures were really built. Now, the fundamentals of how they say they were built, I don't believe for a second, because if you believe the official story of history, the technology simply wasn't there. Or if it was, why isn't it now? Or why wasn't it very quickly afterwards? There's so many questions that lead to more questions, really. But let's dive into the story because it allows us to take a look into this subject. A vast engineering system beside one of the pyramids in Egypt has offered a tantalizing new clue as to how the iconic structures were really built. Two enormous structures buried beneath the sands have been uncovered near the Red Pyramid, stretching across the entire valley and resembling colossal dams rather than roads. For decades, the mysterious formations were interpreted as a stone transport route and a natural rise in the landscape, but a new study has found that they form part of a sophisticated hydraulic network designed to capture floodwater, trap sediment, and regulate its flow. The proposed system includes 2 dams, a reservoir, a diversion canal, and what could be the earliest known advanced triangular spillway in ancient Egypt. Researchers believe it was used to control water and so on, and protect construction zones from violent floods. Now, if ever you want proof that civilizations can go backwards and the pinnacle of evolution, the pinnacle of a civilization is always going to be an upward linear trajectory, look at ancient Egypt, look at ancient Greece. You've only got to look at those. And even then, that's based on believing the official story of history. That's not based on believing anything off planet or anything like that. Just the official story of history. You look at the structures, you look at the influence, you look at the temples that existed and exist still in ruins and still exist in some places in those countries. Societies can clearly go backwards. Now, I've always had a huge question about the official story of history. Of course, when you're into this information, you naturally question everything because you don't believe really anything that you're told, because very little that you're told stands up to any form of scrutiny when you actually really question it. So one of the things that I've always found fascinating is architecture. When I was younger, I used to actually want to be an architect. So buildings and things like that have always been very fascinating to me. And you look at some of these structures, you look at some of these buildings, whether they be stone circles like Stonehenge, whether they be these, the pyramids, whether they be these enormous temples that you find, the Colosseum and things like that. And you read the official story of how they were built, who they were built by, when they were built, the technology that was used. And to me, so much of it just doesn't add up at all. Gareth does his walking channel as well on YouTube, and he's been under a number of in a number of minds and a number of sites over the years where he's phoned me afterwards and said, I don't know what built this, mate, but the official stories don't make any sense. These are like temples underground, and these were supposedly malnourished primitive people that built these. This just doesn't add up. And you look at the railway system in general, there's a lot of questions on how these enormous structures were built by these people with a very, very limited amount of technology. So I've always had a lot of questions about that, and also about the timelines of when these things were built, because again, a lot of that doesn't add up. So the reason I think this is such a fascinating story is there's two opportunities to dive into. There's two theories, I think. I don't really have a preference on each one, but I think there's two theories, in my opinion, that would at least give some kind of lip service to this question. One is that this is off planet. One is that there is some kind of race who have a much, much higher relationship with technology than we do. And therefore these structures, these things like that are able to be built and have been able to be built. That's one option. Another one is that there's talk of a great reset. There's talks of resets and things going back to how they were and so on. Are these structures hangovers from previous resets, from lost civilizations? Lost civilizations like Tartaria and Atlantis are commonly talked about in this circle. And, again, there is evidence, there is examples through history of hangovers from these types of societies that were once there and once thriving and then collapsed. So do the pyramids fall into that category, where they are essentially a leftover phenomena of a previous incarnation of this planet, if you like, or a previous reset, which explains why the technology officially in that period didn't exist to build them? It would explain, if you don't just apply this to the pyramids, apply this to lots of things that you see that you can't really explain. It would answer those questions as to how the technology existed for people to have built those things. How on earth were they built, given the supposed timeline of when they were built and the technology that was meant to have existed in that period? The other option, of course, if you're going to believe the official story of history, which is what this story alludes to here, is that technology was very much advanced in that period, and then the Egyptians were once the pinnacle of that, and that society regressed, and that knowledge was lost, and people essentially are building that up again to get back to the knowledge that these guys had centuries ago, which would tie into what I said at the top, which is that civilizations can regress, of course. I think there's so many questions, and what I find fascinating is that these are the exciting questions to ask. These are the interesting questions to ask. They're not quite as mundane as, what's Donald Trump done today? Or what's Andy Burnham done today? To me, that's boring. That's, it's important to discuss, it's important to highlight, it's important to be informed of what's going on so that you don't end up being, hoodwinked into something, or that you have some awareness around what they're trying to get you to believe or get you to push you to next. I get it. Absolutely. It's a fascinating... it's an important thing to understand. I completely get that. But it's very samey, isn't it? It's this, it's that, it's this, it's that. These are the subjects which are not covered in anything like the same, numbers online or by people in the alternative media. Yet these are actually where, in my opinion, the answers lie to what on earth this place is, which really is the question that we should all want the answer to. Because if we had a definitive understanding of what this reality was, we would live our lives completely differently. Because most people live in a state of fear, a state of anxiety, for one reason or another, whether it's 5 cents anxiety of trying to put food on the table, of simply trying to survive, or whether it's the more spiritual fear of, the more macro fear of what on earth is this place? What happens after I die? Where have I been before? Most people, I would suggest, on a probably a subconscious level, are frightened of death because this is the unknown. As Christiana's film series said, The Great Unknown, that's really what it is. It is a great unknown. And that's why people look to things like religion for faith. It's why people look to spirituality for a different kind of faith. It's why people believe in science, because it gives them what they think is a fixed point of reference, a definitive answer. I sit here now going, I don't know. I'll find out one day, as will you, as will all of us. It's the only absolute certainty we can say in life, is that one day we will find that out. Hopefully not for an extremely long time. But if you took away that fear, if you took away that apprehension of what's next, and you replaced it with something that is comforting, because we believe and we understand that we are infinite awareness and that we have eternal life, how many people would live their lives completely differently? How many people would take risks that they don't take? How many people would strive for their dreams that they don't right now? And how many people would stand up to the system and things that they don't like and things that are not serving them, because they know, well, if I mess up one life, I've got eternal life. You'd remove that state of fear, and you'd also allow people to embrace and enjoy. So for me, these subjects are fascinating because it's where those answers lie. And by asking the big questions, you will get the big answers. So it's interesting to discuss this morning, because I know this show, we talk about generally 5 cent stuff. We talk about politics, we talk about geopolitics, talk about what's happening here and now, events in the world and so on. And that's important. As I say, that's what this show's place is normally to be. But I also think it's important that we nod to these deeper subjects, because more people than ever are awakening. More people than ever are starting to question whether it be political manipulation, whether it be a deep state, whether it be the idea of the matrix, whether it be the financial system, the fact that the healthcare system is actually designed to kill you, not to take care of you. People are questioning that and starting to understand that in numbers like we've never seen before. That is incredible. But what next? What do you then do with that information? Where do you go after that? And I think where we need to go is asking these big questions. What on earth is this? Where are we? Who are we? And by discussing stories like this, where it's looking at history, it's looking at official explanations of things that we've all heard about, we've all been to, it's all seen, I'm lucky enough to have been to the pyramids. And even as a kid, when I went, you're looking at them going, who built this? This feels different. When you go there, I'm sure many of you watching will have been there, there's something there. You can feel there's something there. You can feel an energy to something that just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel normal. And as a result, it leads you to question. And what mainstream everything does is try and, one, ridicule people that question, and two, it tries to discourage people from questioning, because when you start questioning, you're going to start finding some answers, and the answers are not the answers that they want you to find, because they don't want you questioning. They don't want you wide-eyed. They want you very tunnel vision focused on what they want you to think about, the answers they give you, the fears they give you, the explanations they give you for what this reality is. We've spoken about this extensively. This system doesn't care what you believe, really. It just cares that you believe it rigidly. It cares that you believe it unquestionably. So that all this information out here, all these theories, all this, discussion is shut down at source. There's not even a single chink of light in that door for you to even explore alternative explanations for things. That's what they want, because if that's your attitude, you're easy to control, because they can tell you what they want you to hear. They can tell you what you want to hear. They can satisfy that explanation that you have. That's what we see day in, day out. And it's very sad, in my opinion, because we are turning our backs on so many insights, so much information, and so many exciting questions, as I say, that if we would just open our minds a lot more, even a little bit more, to discuss theories and opportunities and discussions, then the world would be very, very different. So, explain mainstream science, how an ancient civilization of primitive people, according to your theories, built these extensive, huge structures, had technology systems that are far ahead of their time, and then completely regressed into a pretty primitive society in comparison to the West. Official narratives don't make sense. They will try and explain it, but to me, they don't make sense at all. So I'd urge you to take a look at this story, and there's others around it as well, and just approach it with an open mind. I don't have all the answers. In fact, I don't have very many answers on this subject. I have more questions than answers. But I think asking those questions is part of the interest, part of the excitement, part of the journey. After all, as I always say, and we say on this channel, no one is awake. We are just simply awakening. The second you think you know it all, the second you think you've got it, is the second it's all over. Because there's always more to know. There's always more information to understand. There's always more knowledge to gain. And when we stop trying to do that, for me, that's the end. You stop trying to improve, you stop trying to learn. And you can apply that to every area of your life. The second you stop trying to improve, you plateau. Whether that's at work, whether that's at home, whether that's in the gym, whether that's sport, whatever it is, you plateau. And no one wants to plateau. We want life to be a constant evolution of more knowledge, more understanding, more insights, more happiness, more experiences, more memories. And for me, opening your mind to the fact that the official explanations for pretty much everything when it comes to history don't add up and don't stand up to any form of scrutiny. So asking them, actually, does that add up? Does that make sense? And asking those questions with open minds, to me, takes you into very, very exciting areas. Well, thank you for joining with me here on YouTube and Twitter. If you head over to iconic.com, we're going to talk about AI. We're going to talk about the Cambridge professor who is embroiled in this plagiarism row and is somehow still the victim. And we're going to talk about weight loss jabs, where finally, it seems, there is an admission that these things are absolutely lethal. Only about 2 years too late, but better late than never, I guess. I'll see you over there.
In 1943, the government seized Nikola Tesla's most dangerous invention, a healing technology that threatened Big Pharma's entire empire. They buried it for 100 years, but it's back, and over 1,000 people worldwide are using it right now. When you join Tesla Club, you get your own Tesla plasma device, 5 times more powerful than the original Violet Ray and built to last. You join a private Telegram group where members share breakthroughs daily. Stroke recoveries, cancer reversals, chronic pain gone in minutes. These aren't stories. These are yesterday's posts. You get lifetime support from people who've been where you are. Technical guidance, therapeutic protocols, a group that actually understands. And you get access to hundreds of documented experiments, real members, real results, real transformations. No prescriptions, no waiting for permission, no begging doctors who don't believe you. Just you, your machine, and a movement taking health sovereignty back. We're Tesla Club, private science club for self-directed healing. Visit tzla.club. Join the revolution.
Plasma. It's back! Don't mention the reptiles, Dave.
Even less is said about the Grey Pope, who some believe to be the true ruling power in the Vatican.
Humans emitting a MAC address.
All of them had Bluetooth signals.
I've never seen it before.
Queuing up to transition their children.
This is the ultimate suicide cult.
What if the symbols around us every day aren't just ornamental?
We lost 1,000 years of history.
What if they're instruction?
That state of awareness is not manipulatable.